All right, guys, welcome back in. This is week 2 of Unrivaled Preps. I'm back here with Kane Harrelson. What's up, man?
Hey guys, how are y'all? Joey, good to see you again, man.
Man, it's always fun getting to sit down and just talk football with the guys, and I mean that's kind of what this is all about. And man, what a week of high school football this past week with the round of the playoffs. Just a ton of action. Um, Man, we went to the Gulf Shores game on Friday night and got to see the Dolphins just handle Carroll. A lot of fun, a lot of excitement around the town, just getting up for that game, and then the atmosphere at the Mick on Friday was awesome. Uh, and Gulf Shores handled Carroll pretty easily. Uh, what was your big game? Classes 1 through 7. What was the game that stood out to you the most?
Man, to
Off
be
the top
honest,
of your head.
I think it was St. Paul's. They went up. Carver Montgomery had, they got two 5-star kids on defensive line, and you would think they would have been able to manufacture some points, even though they were missing their quarterback from the suspension. St. Paul's beat them 13-0. I mean, they shut up. It was unbelievable. I watched the game on TV, and it's crazy to me that people beat St. Paul's during the regular season the way they worked through Carver. And, I mean,
Yeah.
they're super athletic.
Yeah, and we even kind of talked about how Carver, which we kind of thought Carver was kind of the favorite coming into that game, and
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of a big upset in 6A. So, well, yeah, I mean, huge week. Let's start at 7A. Eh, God, just uh, Foley was kind of hanging in there for a minute. Kind of gave us a little hope, but Dothan just too strong for him there in the beginning or at the
Well,
end.
I talked about Dothan having a running back. I thought he would get 40 carries. He only had 19, but the problem was it was for 254 yards. So the kid was averaging like 12 yards a carry. And, the game was 28-28 with 10 minutes to go in the game. And Dothan scores, and as Foley's coming down to try to tie it up, they get a strip sack and run it back for a touchdown. So the score isn't indicative of how close that game really was. I mean, I think Foley
Yeah,
played really well. It was crazy. Looking at the stats, I think the skill level at the DB position for Dothan caused Foley problems. They weren't able to really throw the thing up like they could against Fairhope and some of these other games that they won, and that was the difference. And Dothan absolutely smashed them up front, and they could just run the ball whenever they got good and ready to do it.
yeah. Raymond Blackman, 4 touchdowns, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
254 yards. Just, I mean, when a guy's running
And
running
he had a
wild like
pick
that,
on
it's kind of hard
defense.
to stop. Yeah,
And the kid had a pick on defense. So I mean, he might be. I mean, he might be player of the week in the whole state. The way that he did it, it was crazy.
yeah.
But
Well, then
um,
Foley's coach too, even with the loss, pretty good job by him this year. Named to the South All Star assistant coach, one of the assistant coaches there.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
So congratulations to him. I know it hurts for the Lions, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
well, you got to stop. Yeah, that's it. When you can run the ball like that, it's hard to hard to lose.
Yeah.
Next game, and Dothan moves on. They're going to face Auburn, who topped Fairhope 35-17. I mean, they've got some players too, especially that's going to be on that All Star team as well.
Yeah. That game was, it was riddled with penalties early, and Tim Carter, coming back, talking about the game. He talked about the penalties more than anything, and then he ended up getting ejected later in the game just because they had a blocked field goal, and then I think he thought there should have been a penalty right there, and he argued it, and he ended up causing himself to get pushed out.
Yeah,
But Auburn does that to you, man. They're so athletic, and I mean, they cause you to commit penalties, and they're really, really well coached. And so I'm not really surprised by the score. I'm kind of more surprised they weren't able to throw a little bit better against Auburn. But, The kid threw 2 touchdowns, the Creel kid, but they just weren't. They weren't
Yeah.
able to really get a whole lot going.
We kind of talked about this. I don't really remember. You know, we kind of knew that Dothan, Auburn, Central Phoenix were moving on, and we had talked about this whole region going 0-4. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and those top three teams did, and then but Baker, with a I'm sorry, yeah, they went 0-4. They went 0-4 with Enterprise. Was looking at the wrong thing, but Central Phoenix moves on, and then Enterprise tops Baker 35-26. Um,
Yeah, and you highlighted, or we highlighted the kid last week from Enterprise, the Mikael Johnson. He's on the South All Star thing, and we talked about him being a big part of offense, but he plays a slot receiver. A lot of motions. He ended up with 270, almost 270 yards of all-purpose offense, and he returned the kickoff for a touchdown. And so, us looking at that game, saying he's a big part of it. I mean, he ended up being. I mean, that was in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's a 9-point game, and he probably accounted for 60 or 70% of Enterprise's yards just because. I mean, he ran the ball several times. I think he had three total touchdowns. Receiving, running, and the kickoff. So it was a big deal.
well, um, yeah, so I see, and we kind of we touched on it a little bit last week, but Region 3 swept Region 4 for the third time, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. So that's the
I mean, that's kind of a that's the elephant in the room for those kids, when it comes playoff time.
yeah. So that region. I mean, Region 3. I mean, that's third time, and then 4 out of 5. So, but I
Yeah,
mean, you're looking here. You're going Auburn and Central are going to play for the opportunity next week. They're going to play. Whoever wins that one is going to play the winner of Thompson and Hoover, more than
yeah.
likely in the 7A. And I think Thompson is still better than Hoover at this point. Just even though their schedule is a lot more difficult, but they're up north. But Thompson just has so many. Gosh, I mean, they have so many 4 and 5 star kids running around. It's ridiculous right now.
I kind of think, I think Auburn wins against Dothan pretty handily. I'm not sold. I mean, I am sold. That's the problem. I don't want to just jump the gun over Central Phoenix over Enterprise. I think that's probably in the bag, but I think that could probably be a pretty good game for Central Phoenix.
I think really the difference is Auburn's going to be able to control the ball against
Yeah,
Dothan. Their offensive lines are so good that Dothan's going to sit around and they may only get 19 carries for the Blackman kid, and it won't be at 12 yards a pop that time. It may be at 5 or 6. He's a
5.
really
Yeah,
good player, but I mean, just like Central, they're so big up front, and Bo Nix's little brother's over there, and he's throwing it to kids who are committed to Clemson and Auburn, Alabama, and stuff. So I mean,
yeah.
it's Enterprise. I just don't think Enterprise has dudes who can match up with them defensively. They're going to score a lot of points in that game.
So we're probably looking at the semis being
Yeah.
Central Phoenix and Auburn, and then the
Oh
winner of
yeah.
that game playing the winner of Thompson and Hoover. So,
Yep. Big time.
all right, well that's 7A. Uh, Man, moving on to 6A, big story coming out of 6A today. Well, we say it's a big story. It's really a continuation of
Yep.
stories with Saraland, and I'll jump around a little bit here, but pretty much, I mean, somebody wasn't happy with the state's ruling on the kid that was suspended, or not suspended, but declared ineligible, and then they proved facts that he was in that made him be eligible, and then today Baldwin County school system appealed it. So they may not play Friday night.
I mean, I'm going to say this about the whole is the AHSAA, their ability to determine situations is really ridiculous because they have enough. Like, I don't understand why you can't take the family take the coach at Saraland, take the coach over at Daphne, and say, "Hey, look, this kid was at your school. Now he's at Saraland. What happened?" And them sit there and discuss it, and them say, "Look, I moved. My business is still ran out of the dad's house. I moved to Saraland because we wanted to play football at Saraland. There's not a rule against that. You can move wherever you want to in the state of Alabama and go play football for a school. There's not a rule against it. The deal is a bona fide move." And the reason why it's so ridiculous is because in the state of Alabama, if you have a kid and he moves into your system, you have to push him, you got to put him into a portal basically. And I've sat in a room with Steve Savarese, who was the I guess the last leader of the AHSA. He retired last year, and so he basically told this coach one time that, "Hey, this kid is not ineligible, but the way that you registered him made him ineligible. Meaning you click B before you click A in this registration process." And that school had to forfeit several games. And the kid wasn't even he played on special teams, and I think they ended up forfeiting like 2 games. It was because the kid he didn't have any parents. He was in a boys' home basically, and he got moved into the system. But it wasn't even he was playing here and now he's coming here. It was just the series of events to register the kid. And so to me, Baldwin County coming in and saying, "Well, we just want to make sure we understand the rules next year," I think it's kind of a cop out because they're mad because the kid moved from Daphne to Saraland. He's obviously a player over there. And
100%, they're mad. I mean, that's
I
just.
mean, but
I've seen it before down here. I mean, I have my own comments that I probably should keep to myself about this whole deal, but I mean, that's all it is. You're affecting like 16, 17 year. We're talking about college kids yet. I mean,
right.
you're being petty over high school kids. For what? For what?
But
What?
and
That's
at the same
it's so
time,
irritating.
it's there's so many other things they could focus on because to me is the problem is the coaches do not know, like when they get a kid that moves in and they say, "Okay, where are you living, where did you live?" And the parents tell, I mean, what are you supposed to do? You're going to go hire, so a school, the tax money, you're going to go hire a private investigator to investigate this kid and tell him, "No, you're not, that's not true." I mean, given these coaches talk to these kids, they're not like, the HSA is not stupid about the idea that, hey, these kids, they hear this kid is unhappy and he doesn't like the coach, or the coach gets fired. Then they say, "Hey, why don't you come over and play for us?"
Hmm.
That's illegal. You can't do that, but that happens in every school system. You don't think the Birmingham kids are
Oh,
done like that?
yeah,
Or the kids over in Mobile when they're if you live on this side of the road, you go to this school. You live on this side of the road, you go to this school. And they're a 5-star defensive lineman. I mean, what do you? But at the same time, it's like, how in the world has this kid been at this school now for 12 weeks playing football, and the AHSAA hasn't made a determination on whether or not he's eligible or not? That's what's so ridiculous in
yeah,
everybody, because I don't think anybody would argue if they come down and say no or yes, whatever. Just have a set of rules and say, "Look, did he move? Did he not move?" Because the coaches know if a kid's illegal, but the problem is they don't know when a kid is legal. Just like the Mobile Christian kid.
yeah,
They're a private school. They're in a private school who can give scholarships to these kids to come play. And he didn't. And but now they're playing the AHSAA playoffs, and you're like, can you just give us a set of rules that make sense? And that's all they're asking for. But
yeah.
Baldwin County, man, nobody has any sympathy for them pushing this at this point in the season because it doesn't change anything. And I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, what is what?
I
Yeah,
guarantee you, and
so
this
ridiculous.
is my opinion because of the school that it affects. If this would have been Gulf Shores, if Gulf Shores was still a county school, if I mean, I'd say Foley, anybody else. The fact of the school that it is that the kid left from is why
Sure.
Baldwin County's pursuing it.
Oh, I
If that
guarantee
school
you,
wants a new school, they get a new school.
dude,
They want a new gymnasium, they get a new gymnasium.
there's somebody who knows somebody who, But my thing is, it's like if you got the facts to make him ineligible, then bring him up there and let's do it. Steve Savarese, he sat there one time. He told me he was in a conversation. I was saying, he said he'll be running out of church, and somebody will come up to him when he was a leader of AHS and say, "Hey, do you know the baseball player at X school is ineligible?" And the dude would be walking out of church on Sunday at 12 p.m. or 12 p.m. and people will be coming up telling on other kids. But the problem is, depending on which school it is, I promise you this: if it's Blunt High School and Viger, nobody cares.
No,
Nobody's going to raise an eyebrow at them dudes.
nobody
I
cares.
promise you, because I mean, it's just not. But since it's Daphne and the way they're set up, they obviously have someone in there who's keeping tabs. But it's ridiculous that they're going to put the whole season, and not that kid, but the other kids,
All the entire roster.
and try to tarnish the coach, because every single, I mean, you can look at Orange Beach, you can look at Gulf Shores, you can look at every school, and there are kids who move into that school system.
Oh,
And
100%.
I promise you, not all of them are registered correctly. The difference is there's somebody over there who's mad about it, who digs enough to make it look illegitimate, and that's
Yeah.
the problem. So
Well, there's
no
only one
sympathy
other
for me from
school in
Baldwin
Baldwin County that could do that, and everybody just be cool with it. But they got beat this week, so we don't even have to talk about them tonight.
County. They're
Spanish Fort.
ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyway, let's talk about 6A here.
Yeah. So we
Um,
got so we kind of already touched on St. Paul's and Carver a little bit. Yeah, I mean that's kind of
that was the one,
that was
really.
the one the one you didn't think would go. I mean they end up hitting St. Paul or hitting Carver and shutting them down. So uh,
So let's talk about the bracket for a second. So the way the
yeah.
bracket's set up, if you don't know, if you look at it online, you're like, who's home and who's away. If you see it, the bold teams at home, but the Alabama has the most ridiculous rule of anybody in the whole playoffs in the whole country is if you're a team and you've already hosted a playoff game and you play against a team who has not hosted a playoff game, then that team now gets to host a playoff game. So you can be 10-0 and win your region title and win your first round playoff game. And if the lower seed wins the week before, then the second round you may be traveling as a 10-0 team to like a 5-5 team who could be 200 miles away from you.
So
It's ridiculous.
So in this case at the bracket, Pelham hosted the playoff game last week.
Right.
They went 44-14 against Northridge,
That's
and
right.
now they have to travel to
That's
even though
it.
because they won the game, they have to come down here and play St.
Right.
Paul's at home.
And
Hmm.
St. Paul's is like a 6-4 team rolling to limping into the playoffs. Happens to be the team without their starting quarterback, and now St. Paul's gets rewarded with a home playoff game. I mean, it makes if
That
you're a
wouldn't
region
happen. That doesn't
champion.
happen in any other
No,
sport in America.
look in Georgia, if two region champions or two, let's say two seeds meet each other, you know what they do? The coaches come together and they flip a coin and they call
Old
it in the
school.
air. And if it's heads, then that guy gets the home game, and this guy gets the away. Then he's away. If the two region champions, the high seed always gets the home game, except in the state of Alabama. And
Where?
we're sitting over
How do
here
you think that would
making.
work? How do you think that would work this week with Pelham and St. Paul? Where would those coaches meet to flip that coin? If that were was here, just do it virtually.
Evergreen, Georgiana.
that's
I don't know.
that's a long haul
Down
to
65.
come
I
to
mean,
flip a quarter.
yeah, but I'm telling you right now, if I was Pelham, I would do that in a heartbeat instead of travel down here and get beat, because they're going to get
Again,
beat by St. Paul's. That's that's what's crazy. I don't think Pelham's going to be able to beat St. Paul's from what I saw. They're unbelievably physical up front, and they're I mean they ran like 17 formations in the first 17 plays of that football game. It was ridiculous. I mean,
um,
Carter Montgomery had no idea what was going on. And the only reason why it was as close as it was because they had two 5-star defensive linemen who would all of a sudden make a play on 4th and 1 and kept them their drives from stopping, or whatever. But anyway,
well, you got.
uh,
I mean, so that's that could potentially end up being a pretty good game. just looking at the second round games, you got Hillcrest and Saraland, which we kind of touched on Saraland a little bit. Hillcrest had a big win over Calera, 38-0.
Dude, they held him to 68 yards. They held Calera to 68 yards of offense. And they had a backup quarterback, and they were missing their top rusher because he was over there in a boot because he like cracked an ankle or something several weeks ago. He may be back this week. The quarterback won't be, but the running back might be. I mean, Saraland has not played any defense like they're about to roll in the Hillcrest Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
And they haven't traveled like that either. That's a long ways to go. And they're about to play a team that, I mean, the bunch hadn't given up like 190 points something all year. And I don't know if Saraland can beat them, to be honest with you.
So
I don't know.
in this case, how we just talked about the bracket with Saraland and Hillcrest both hosting,
Mm-hmm.
does that go to the higher seed?
It
That
goes to
automatically defaults to the higher seed.
the whoever's on top of the bracket.
Okay.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, man.
Right? I mean,
they both just hosted,
whoever's on
and
top
then
of the bracket, you
now
get
they're
it,
saying, you get
buddy.
it.
So Hillcrest, they're like got a free ride here. I mean, really, that should be coming down to Saraland. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that one's going to go. I don't think Saraland scores 48 points. I bet they don't. I bet they might not score 20 points on them. I don't know, but we'll see. That's
Yeah.
That's gonna be a good game.
Well, that second round, the next game down the bracket, Homewood beat McAdory 35-30 and move on to the second round. They're going to face Pike Road, who just I mean, it's a stun to me. I didn't see Spanish Fort losing in the first round. I don't think many people did. So,
You
man,
know, I watched, and I say this a lot. I said I watched this game. Well, I watched this game, and Spanish Fort had an opportunity to go up 21-7 before the half, and they had a touchdown call back, and they ended up scoring right there in the first of the third quarter or early in the third quarter. But Pike Road, I don't even know what they did differently because so the coach at Pike Road, name is Ed Rigsby. He was at Elba, which is a 1-2A school for several years, went to back state titles. And all they do is they run a double wing set and they snap it to a guy and he runs right or left. And then on defense, they run straight man coverage and they put everybody else in the box and they blitz like 8 guys at a time. And Spanish Fort has a running back who is really good. And he just never could really break any tackles or break runs in the second half. But what's crazy is Pike Road's going to line up and they're going to snap it to one kid all night long. You got to remember, Pike Road has a 5-star offensive lineman who's going to Alabama. They had the number 1 defensive tackle in the country last year, and the kid who starts at running back for Ole Miss, that Justice kid, he came from Pike Road that Lane Kiffin always talks about.
mm-hmm.
So they're absolutely loaded with athletic people, and they're going to beat Homewood. They'll end up in the third round, probably against Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, because Homewood has a quarterback who's about 80% of their offense, and he's not good enough to beat Pike Road by himself. I don't think so. Because all they're going to do is blitz him, and he's going to have to throw it up to kids who aren't as good as who's covering him.
Yeah, Pike Road does have some athletes. And I don't think that's the home was the Patriots. I mean, you're right. They only got that. Their quarterback is their offense, and so that's just kind of how the bracket falls, though. I mean, it's kind of the only thing that helps Homewood here is that they're playing at home. That's it.
I don't think it's going to matter. I mean, the kid they have that's running the football for them is probably an all-state sprinter. I mean, he is so fast that if he has any seam, and Homewood is just not athletic enough to do it. And, Homewood used to be in the North forever and ever. They were always in the North. And they went to several state titles, but they never could beat some of the South teams when they were in 6A, 7A and stuff. But now I don't know how in the world they're in North Birmingham. I have no idea how they're in the South.
Like North Central Birmingham. It's not even close to the South.
Like, how is there just not – it's crazy. I don't know how they're even down. I bet they wish they were in the North because they
might get to the third round.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Uh, yeah. I mean, we kind of touched on St. Paul's and Pelham. But then that last game, another Region
mhm.
One here, Theodore and Hueytown. Theodore gets a home game against Hueytown. Who beat Benjamin Russell 56-28 Friday night, and uh,
Yeah, I mean they're
I mean, Theodore's.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I
It just
think
depends on Hueytown here. I mean, I kind of think it helps Theodore being at home. I think Hueytown's probably the better football team.
they're more athletic. I think offensively, I mean, you look at Theodore's schedule with Blunt and Viger and St. Paul's and some of them dudes, like they really
Yeah,
haven't played an
playing some
offense
dogs. Yeah,
that has five individuals who could score at any given time. And so I think they're going to have a hard time matching up with these guys as long as Hueytown doesn't do anything weird and they just stick to what they've been doing. They're going to be able. I think they'll still score, and I think Theodore will score because I think they're better coached. But Hueytown has. I mean, they've always they're odd because they're one of those teams where they're super athletic, but they also draw really good coaches because their facilities are so good. And so I mean, I think this could be like a 45-40 game or something like that. I don't know. I mean, I just can't imagine Theodore stops Hueytown very much and vice versa. I mean, Theodore's still super. I mean, they're a really good team. So I hope Theodore wins it because we got to keep somebody down here in the playoffs
yeah,
because Saraland just has such a tough matchup. But I mean, I think St. Paul's and Theodore come out of here and end up playing in the third round.
and yeah. All right, well, moving on up the bracket to 5A. Uh, man, just this some good, not some good games, some not so good games. I mean, uh, number one right off the block, UMS Wright was only up one, close, like in the first half, and just like they always do, made their adjustments. Um, Now, I mean,
So imagine being Headland and it's
you're
14
right there
13,
at it.
14-13, and you're Headland and you're playing UMS right at UMS right. And you're down by 1 point or something, right? And there's like 5 seconds to go in the second quarter. And guess what happens? Cole Blaylock takes that football about 70 yards and scores with no time left. I mean, I believe if I was a player on the sideline, I would have jumped off the sideline to tackle him before I let that happen. But he scored with no time on the clock, rolling into halftime. It was 21-13, and the final score ends up being
I
56
was
to
going to say,
13.
Headland didn't score
I
again.
mean,
They didn't. They were right there.
I
You know.
mean, so UMS Wright scores 5 more times in the second half. But this is what I've been saying to people. It's like it don't matter what the score is at halftime. If they're close, then they're going to make their adjustments and they're going to shut you down offensively
Yeah.
and pound that head on offense. And their offensive line is so good that Cole Blaylock kid, again, he's going to South Alabama.
Yep.
He's not a SEC kid at all. Like if you look at him, he's a great high school football player, but that offensive line makes him look really good. But he's tough as nails. But gosh almighty, I mean, at halftime, some of these coaches need to look at each other and be like, "Hey, what can we do completely opposite of what we were doing?" Because UMS Rice is about to change that for you.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, then we also talked last week how we just weren't really sure about Demopolis. We didn't know if
Mm-hmm.
Demopolis was sure about Demopolis, and the big win, 48
Yeah.
28 over Elmore County, moving on to the second round. Um, to face Faith.
So,
Um,
so Demopolis was again. I watched. I ended up going back and watching this game, and the score was like 15-8 or something, or it was like 14-16. And it was like Elmore County got stopped on fourth down with like 30 seconds to go in the second quarter. Demopolis throws a bomb and scores right before halftime. So they end up going up like 10 points, and they end up piling it on. But they just, man, they played. I still think Faith beats them just because Faith, like when the football's thrown on the other side of the field, Faith has like 10 guys who their whole purpose in life is to go put their helmet on that guy. And Demopolis is not like that.
Yeah.
Like Elmore was a really well coached team. I was super impressed with Elmore County. I'm telling you, like they were. If a couple plays in this game was like should have been like a 21-28 game or something. I mean, it really should have been a lot closer. But I mean, when Demopolis they see the ball, you'll see their DBs just kind of watching the play. But Faith, I mean, them dudes are like on a mission to hit people with their helmet, and
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the difference in this football game.
Well,
But
that
they
takes us.
go ahead.
Yeah. I was saying that that would be. I mean, there's 3 Region 1 teams left,
Mm-hmm.
or 3 in this division, and well, I'm just making sure. Yeah, Charles Henderson won. So I mean that's the first one that advances on. We are kind of already talked about UMS Wright. They're going to advance. Well, we haven't talked about that game. We talked about them winning.
Right.
Selma and Tallahassee. That's that's just kind of a. I'm sorry, that was a lopsided game, very lopsided.
Well, we kind of
And
pointed out that Selma was either going to be a feast or famine type of deal,
yeah,
throwing it up, and Tallahassee obviously was athletic enough to stop that. And
yeah,
I mean, that game, there was, was that 33 points, but the game really wasn't that close. I mean, Tallahassee probably could have scored like 80 points if they wanted to. I mean, Selma, they laid down after they down 2 or 3 scores, but I mean, we talked about. I mean, they were either going to throw it up and make it happen, or Tallahassee was going to be able to stop it completely, and they stopped it completely. It was a good win for them. Again, here's a stupid thing with HSAA is Tallahassee now hosts Charles Henderson, and Tallahassee was the 4th seed in that region,
yeah.
and Charles Henderson, I think they won that region championship. So,
And not only they win the region championship, they won their
right,
like they're the higher
there's no
seed. They won their
reason.
game, and now they're
I,
going on a
I
road
mean,
game.
if I was the governor of Alabama, the first rule I would do is say the higher seed hosts the game, no matter what. You don't deserve to host a playoff game if you're the 3 seed out of a region, and now you're playing a region champion. I mean, if you're a region champion, really, you can almost guarantee you may have an opportunity not to host but one game in the first 3 rounds, depending on who it is. So it's just kind of silly. I mean, it really is.
I
But
don't know.
Charles
I mean,
Henderson,
I know she's been busy, especially with the election. I think I'll put in a call.
hey,
I'll just
look,
say, hey, look, we got to adjust this bracket.
I mean, what
This has
else
got to
she do?
change.
I haven't seen anything else going
Sleeping.
on. I mean, we're
She's
not.
been sleeping.
She's a piece. I mean,
She's not even. She won't even watch this unless I have to post it at about 5 a.m. if I'm gonna get Kay Ivy to see this and say, hey, we got to make a change to this playoff bracket because it ain't happening.
it's silly, is what it is. But
uh,
Tallahassee, man, they had a great season. I mean, where are they right now? They're, end up 7-4. I mean, they're going to end up 7-5. Charles
yeah,
Henderson's going to beat them. I mean, I think so. I mean, they beat them earlier in the year. They're a similar team to Beauregard. Beauregard beat Charles Henderson by like 5 points earlier in the year,
yeah.
and Beauregard put it on Tallahassee early too. So I don't think Charles Henderson is going to be able to beat them.
Well, I gotta say,
Tallahassee's
out
not
of
be
the
able to beat
7
Charles Henderson.
classes we have, and just even breaking down like 5A to me is just it's the most interesting. It seems like it's the
Mm-hmm.
meatiest out of all of it. There's just so many good teams, and they all advanced.
Yep.
I mean that UMS Wright Beauregard game is going to be just. I'm
So
excited about that. I'm excited about Gulf Shores Central Clay County. We already talked about Faith probably can beat Demopolis, and then
it's
Charles
crazy.
Henderson and Tallahassee is going to be a pretty good one too. So
Dude, I bet Gulf Shores, they're going to have a really good chance to win this game. It's a shame they have to travel. Again, Central Clay, they used to be in the north forever and ever,
yeah,
and I mean,
and if you look at
it's
that's
so
a
hard, man.
4.5 hour drive to Central Clay
Oh
County. That's
yeah.
not. I mean,
If you've ever been to
you can
Jacksonville
leave.
State, the
Yeah,
college, Jacksonville State, it's like right down the road
yeah,
from
it's
Jacksonville
just down the
State.
road.
And so it's unbelievable they're even in the South. I guess there's just not enough 5A schools down here or something. I don't know, but it's crazy that there's not any other. They shouldn't be down here. There's got to be somebody we can switch with or something. But I think
All right,
Gulf
fine.
Shores has a chance to beat them. I mean, they just control the ball. So Central Clay. I tell you this: if you know anything about football, I'm gonna say this. There's like three other schools that do this. They line up in the wishbone. So when
Mhm.
Central Clay, when life is not good to them in a football game, they line up in the wishbone, and they have an all-state running back, and they hand it to him every single time. And their offensive line, they just allow them to take over the football game. But before then, they'll try to throw it, they'll try to do sweeps, they'll do all these other little things. But as soon as they realize, man, we need to win this game, they line up in the wishbone and they hand it to number 8 is the guy. And Gulf Shores is going to make them do it. And I just hope that our defensive line and our linebackers, that front 7, 8 guys are able to come downhill and hit this kid in the mouth, because if not, I mean, it's either they're going to stop it or they're not. I mean,
Well, they
the
got some
kid,
kids. Gulf Shore's got some kids that can
I know.
lay the wood. So,
Oh yeah.
but on the other hand of that, I mean, if they can run that clock all they want. That's all they're going to do
Mhm.
because Gulf Shores can score quick.
Oh
So
sure.
I mean, if Gulf Shores is clicking and they're scoring, I mean, run that clock out, run it, and because I mean, it's not. I don't know. I think you're right. I think Gulf Shores does have a good chance to win the
I
ball game.
do.
Uh, I mean, I'm excited for them. I hope they do. There's some really good athletes on that football team. There's a lot of like you said, they're well coached. Um, I mean, and Friday night they played about as good as they played all year. I mean,
Yep.
if that was the time the atmosphere, everything, they came out, and they played the best they played all year. So, um, man, it's like I'd like to make the drive. It ain't
You almost
happening, but
want to
I'd
make the
like to
trip to
make. Yeah,
Beauregard,
I
or up
want to.
to Central Clay, don't you?
I do,
Uh,
but
hey,
it ain't happening.
if we could find somebody at this airport who would just help us out for one night and put us on a little jet and get us up to Anniston, then we could drive down to
Yeah, I
Lineville and watch the game. I mean, it's pretty easy.
mean,
Jeez.
yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of try. I'm just getting back with losing Baton Rouge last weekend. I
Yeah,
just
I understand.
I wasted my time. I should have just stayed home
Yep,
and and went to Limeville this weekend.
I tell you.
Let's see, who have we not talked about in 5A? Well, we haven't talked about Beauregard coming down south.
So Beauregard, that score is not very indicative of the game. I think that game's more of like a 50 to whatever game. There's has several turnovers early in the game, and their whole thing is if they can use their big running backs and control the football game. Their starting center had a hernia surgery 3 weeks ago, so he's out. He was a really good football player, but they're very similar to be honest with you, just like a UMS Rye or Central Clay. They're good up front. They have a tight end, H-back type of kid who will come in there and set the edge or whatever. Quarterbacks are a really good athlete. They all, but the difference is they got 2 running backs who can actually carry it, and they got a sophomore wide receiver who's probably a future Division I kid, and he's just figuring it out. So I know UMS Wright has some really good safeties, and they do a great job of spying the field and taking care of that type of stuff. But I don't know if they're. I'm hoping they're not able to just sit on it and do both. And
Yeah,
again, the quarterback at Beauregard, the dad is the OC, so they have a great connection. And so being able to formation and then at a halftime making adjustments to saying, okay, here's what. So if the game goes and let's say it's a 14-14 game, UMS Wright's going to look down and say, hey, what'd they do? And they take it away automatically. Is Beauregard going to be able to say, hey, here's the fixes to what they may do?
yeah.
Do they have something else that's going to, hurt UMS in the second half because they have not been. I mean, their points per game in the second half is probably like 7 for the whole season. I mean, they just don't give up a whole lot of points in the second half. And we'll see with Beauregard, but I know Justin Jones really well, and the OC is a great offensive mind. So I think they'll be able to figure something out and manufacture some points, and that's going to be the key. As long as they don't get down early with UMS Wright running that football.
Well, yeah. Well, so I think the game plan, will probably be watching that UMS Wright Beauregard game live uh,
Yeah,
here Friday night. So looking forward to that. Um, I don't know. I mean, how's the semifinals looking 5A? I mean,
they're wide
last week,
open.
yeah. I mean, last week we were kind of just like, okay, it's gonna be Central Clay County and UMS Wright. And then now you kind of look at it. I mean, Faith has a good chance to win. Gulf Shores has a good chance to win. That'd be a good game in the third round. And then Charles Henderson and either one of those teams, Beauregard or UMS Wright.
Yeah.
Um,
And Charles
man, it's just
Henderson, they would host that game. I mean, they're going to host
they
whoever
would. Yeah,
wins
you're
that
right.
football game.
They'd get UMS
Mhm.
or Beauregard at home.
Yeah, either one.
I mean,
And
I
then
can't point to Charles Henderson on the map. I mean, I wouldn't even know where
they're
these
in
kids had to
Troy.
go.
They're in Troy, Alabama. It's not a bad drive, but um, you know, I hope Go Shores wins and they're able to get back over there. I mean, they're at that point they'll host Faith,
Mm.
and then at that point they'll host the semis if they get past Faith
Yeah,
to Gallup.
they'll host
Yeah,
Faith, and then
they'll host the semis, no matter who
which would
wins
be
out
no
that.
bad. Yes, I mean you could be looking at a UMS right and
Go Shores
at
semi
Gulf Shores
game at
in Gulf Shores, and that might
in Go
change a
Shores.
few things
Dude,
than the last time.
be 30,000 people at that game. It'd be
Oh
unbelievable.
man,
All the snowbirds be showing up. It'd be
thirty
crazy.
thousand and one because I know I'm going to be there. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
be eating Thanksgiving over there with them.
whew. All right, so 4A was kind of 4A is kind of like 5A a little bit. Just there's a lot of meat to these teams. A lot of good teams. Mostly, like you said, top heavy. But
Yeah,
Andalusia, Anniston, Hanley, all won. But there was a bit of an upset in 4A.
yeah. The only one I thought that had a chance was Jacksonville, and I kind of talked about them last week, just talking about how athletic they were, and they ended up going to Bibb County and beating them by a touchdown. But
Well,
I mean, the other one was Orange Beach. Man, you know, I know they're disappointed, and we all are disappointed for them. I mean, my kids go Shores and stuff, but at the same time, like you want those guys to do well.
yeah,
And BT Washington, I think if they were to play 10 times, I think Orange Beach beats them 7 or 8 out of 10. It's just how the games roll sometimes. When you start scoring all those points, all of a sudden you got, maybe a running back just wants the ball opposed to playing DB or something. I mean, whatever it is, it's tough. I mean, it is so hard when you got kickoffs being run back and like there's no structure to your defense at all, just because they found some things that work really well, and they just kind of run out of time. But
well, I mean, it was a good game. I mean, hey, those kids played their hearts out. So
mm-hmm.
congrats. I mean, and only to be what their second year
Yep,
football. I mean, in 4A
dude, they'll be
nonetheless.
fine. I
Yeah,
mean, they're gonna be
congratulations to them.
fine. I mean, it's a great season, and those kids have nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, BT, well, I mean, they're an athletic school, but I mean, they'll
Yeah,
look back on this season and say, "Man, it was a lot of fun." And but again, I mean, they're disappointed. They're going to be disappointed for a long time. But next year, hopefully they'll come and
just
they'll
flip the page because
right,
they're gonna be right back in it next year.
sure,
That's a young school, so the kids are young. It's not like you got
mm-hmm.
a huge senior class. You got a
Yeah,
bunch of kids
right,
coming back. So,
yep,
um, yeah. So just looking at those second round games, you got Anniston hosting BT Washington. Anniston just blew out Sipsey Valley 52-0.
Man, Sipsy Valley though, they're the same way. They used to be in the north. I don't know what they're doing
I
down
mean,
here
that's
with us.
that school is north of Tuscaloosa,
I
northwest.
know.
Almost, it's 20 minutes from Mississippi.
I don't know what they're doing down here. I really don't. But they won. Hey,
We
they
got
won
we
it.
got to
So
appoint we got to appoint a new, like, if the governor's not going to worry about it, we got to appoint a new, like, director of alignment for high school football, because this it just rules committee or something. You got to put you in charge of what's going to happen. I'm gonna write my letter tomorrow.
there's eight
Uh,
eight teams and there's 8 teams in that region with Sipsy Valley. So it's not like they're only have like 5 or 6 teams. Like they could have
yeah,
very easily took six. I mean, could you imagine being like, I mean, some of these Bibb County and even
Gordo.
Monticello and having to go to
Yeah,
freaking Sipsy Valley every other week? I mean, what if they play them in
man.
basketball and all that crap? I mean, they got to go up there 10 times a year. It's ridiculous. Crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
mean,
if you got to go Sipsy Valley, because it's swampy up there.
oh, that dude.
Ain't no driving.
Mm-mm.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, Anniston got BT Washington. They like I said, handle Sipsy Valley. BT 46-43 over Orange Beach. Then you got American Christian over Mumford in a very close game, 16-13. And Andalusia, Major's gonna be mad at me because we're not going to Ed's Drive-In this weekend for which we wouldn't have been
Dude,
going anyway with the way the bracket's set up. But
that was a lot
uh,
closer than what I thought it was going to be. To be
yeah,
honest, I thought that was like a 40-7 game, but I mean Jackson played really well, and obviously they're a lot better defensively than I thought they were. Because
yeah,
Andalusia has a running back who's, I think he's one of the top. He's a sophomore right now. I think he's one of the top 10 running backs in the country at Andalusia High School, and he did not show out last
yeah.
Friday night at all. But again, he's probably 12, 14 years old too. So 15 years old. Playing against Jackson has good. Jackson has legit guys sometimes. So you
Yeah.
never know.
Well,
But
Bayside season came to an end, losing to Catholic Montgomery at home, 41-13. They move on to face Jacksonville, who beat Bibb County 35-28. And then the game I'm looking for out of most is this TR Miller Hanley game. I
I
think it's gonna be a
agree.
really good game. I mean, just both of them scored a lot of points last Friday, and outside, which West Blockton, I don't know how much of a threat they really were to Hanley. Um, but I think it's gonna end up being a really, that's gonna be the prime time matchup in 4A.
Yeah, I agree. I think Montgomery Catholic beats Jacksonville by like 30 points. I don't know about Andalusia. I don't know what's going on with them, but I mean, hopefully they can. I think they win the game. It's away, but they play a lot better at home. But
Yeah.
and then Anniston again. Anniston has to go down to BT Washington, and BT Washington is a daggone. Yeah, they're a 4 seed or something in that region. I mean, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. They're a 3 seed, and Anniston is sitting up here at 10-0, and they got to spend their money to come travel down to these guys. But they're
Yeah.
going
And
to beat them
it's
by
not
50
that we
points.
think that we not it's not that we think that Anniston now could possibly lose to BT Washington. I mean,
No,
which I guess is
it's
possible,
just
but it's more along the lines of these kids have accomplished what they accomplished all year. Being number one in the bracket, and now they've got to go on a road game.
oh
It doesn't
yeah.
make a lot of
I'm
sense.
telling you, if you're a region champion, you have the chance of hosting the first round, and then round 2 and 3, you could be on the road. Because if you're on the bottom side of the bracket and you have to play like a 3 or 4 seed in the second round, then you're out of luck. I mean, you're traveling to a 3 or 4 seed, then you could travel to another 2 or 1 seed in the third round. You could be a region champion and only get one playoff game at the house.
Yeah.
Just makes no sense. No sense at all. But again, I mean, that's something for these guys to figure out. But either
Yeah.
way, I mean, I think this bracket's pretty clear cut, except for T.R. Miller and Hanley.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Well, looking at 3A, man, just had some good games. There's one game I'm a little disappointed just from the season they had. With XL's season coming to an end at Pike County, which I mean it was kind of we kind of talked last week about Pike County, but like it was a little disappointing because they those kids had a really good season.
Yeah.
Um,
We said it though. We said Pike County was going to come in and give them a game,
yeah, they
but
got one.
because they're
They
so
got
fit.
overran with it.
I mean, what happened in that second half? I don't know. I just know it was like 28-14 at halftime or something, and it ended up being a daggone 42-14. I
Boat
guess
race.
But again, the XL runs a single wing, and so they're sitting over here and they don't throw the ball at all. And their whole idea is either we control the clock or we get beat by 30. And
Yeah,
that's what happened.
that's what happened.
And
They got beat by 30
I mean,
plus.
you look at their at the end of the day, they're 9-2. If Mobile Christian doesn't have to forfeit the game, they're sitting at maybe 8-3. That's a good season for those guys. But I mean, they got some kids coming back. They'll still be good next year just because of the region they're playing in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, Davil Thomasville. Looks like it might be a pretty decent matchup. Uh, it's kind of one of those ones where the bracket just kind of worked out. Uh, looking down, W.S. Neal, St. James. Man, St. James just put it on. Uh, Walter Welborn.
Walter Wellborn.
Yeah,
Where
like,
they are.
what a high
I think
school
they're
name
in
that is.
Birmingham.
Where do you guys go? I go to Walter Welborn.
You do not sound like you have a football team at Walter Wellborn.
I mean, you probably got a
What's their mascot?
top notch chess team, if I had to
Right.
guess.
They're probably like the
Uh,
Whippets or something. They're like
W.S. Neal's got
who
St.
knows?
James coming into town. St. James had you know, um, academy. Just, I don't know. That used to be a pretty Mobile Christian. Just handled them. Like,
Dude, I told you
um,
though. I told you Mobile
and they got
Christian
Trinity coming in.
HA was 10-0, and Mobile Christian came to town. There was
Hmm.
the worst possible situation for HA was Mobile Christian making the playoffs with all those
Yeah,
losses from the forfeit. And sure enough, I'm telling you right now, there's not a team in that side of the bracket that's going to beat them. They'll end up in the semis, probably against Thomasville. To be honest with you.
I definitely look forward to. Yeah, Mobile Christian versus Thomas will be a really good matchup.
Oh man,
Um,
so Thomas, you know, crazy. But I
I
knew they
mean,
were.
the highest score I've seen so far, the highest score since Alabama Christian beats Randolph County 63-30. I mean, if I could get some lines on some of these overs in these high school games, I
Right.
mean, man, we'd have our
Hey,
own
over
studio at this point.
over would be 75 on some of these games. It's ridiculous. But hey, I watched the Alabama Christian and Randolph County game. Randolph County runs the they set up in the wishbone every single. I mean, they're a 3A school who's in the playoffs and they're running the wishbone. And Alabama Christian, they're just tackling the guy. I mean, they just have normal dudes, but Alabama Christian, they lined up maybe their first 20 plays of the game. Again, they lined up in like 17 formations. I'm sitting there watching it. I'm just like, they're shifting over here. They have this motion. They got this guy. And Randolph County sitting back here, and they run the daggone wishbone. And who knows defensively what they're capable of. And Alabama Christian's just, they'd be like, this guy's wide open, this guy's wide open, and they run the football over here. In Randolph County, they hadn't moved at all. They were 100% outmatched in the coaching field. And
Yeah,
I think Alabama Christian has a chance to do that against Pike County because Pike County, they're going to line up in like 5 or 6 formations. But Alabama Christian, when they get the football, they're going to do stuff that Pike County has only dreamed. I don't even know how Pike County is going to practice against Alabama Christian because they're going to line up in so much stuff that they haven't seen any of this with the people they play.
yeah.
So, I mean, I bet Alabama Christian may score again. I mean, if you have an over on this one, I think they might score 40 points on Pike, but I think Pike's going to run the ball a lot and score some points too. But I think Alabama Christian wins it.
I mean, we might, and you kind of already touched on it. I just looking forward to the next round. I mean, this could probably be, this is probably going to be what Thomasville Mobile Christian in the semis.
I think so. Thomasville runs
Yep.
the wing T. They were down 9-0 against Strawn. Strawn's not. Strawn is okay. They have hard physical kids, but they're not super athletic. And eventually, Thomasville ends up scoring with a few minutes to go in the game. Ended up scoring again later. But I'm telling you, Dadeville lines up. Dadeville was super unimpressive, I guess, when I watched them. I thought I would see legit guys, but they line up in double tight and they run ISO, they run power, and that was really it. They ran a little reverse thing. And really, Southside Selma did a good job against them early. I thought this game would be a lot worse, but Dadeville just I really don't think they can play with Thomas. I think Thomasville scores like 40 points on them and beats them like 40-20 or something. I mean, I don't think Dadeville can handle them.
Yeah. Just we're making our way up. We're making our way up from. We start at 7A and we're going up, and I keep scrolling back through these games. I'm like, all right. Last weekend I was sitting there on my phone at the Gulf Shores game, like clicking on games, just trying to watch something. And now I'm like, God, now I'm gonna do it again because there's a lot of good games this week.
Oh yeah, that Trinity
Uh,
Mobile Christian game is gonna be good. But
hmm
Trinity's not good enough though. They're from Montgomery, so. But like for a great example, Sachs High School has never been in the South ever. This is their first year in the South, and they're usually in Piedmont's region, or even Randolph County used to be in the north for several years. I don't know what they're doing down here. Like
yeah.
like I don't even know what region they're in. They're down here with Region 4 with Dadeville. I mean, Sachs has no business being in the South. They need to be up there with the North guys, and maybe they'll do a little bit better. But I mean, it's a big difference playing Trinity than it is playing like Walter Wellborn and some of those dudes every week.
Yeah. Well, let's move on up to A. We got two classes left here. Region 1 is weaker than normal this year. Looking at Clark County, they barely escaped with Cottonwood. There's
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I'll tell you another team I was looking forward to. That JJ Blackshear didn't. That's usually another team that's kind of a stud here in this time of the year, and they got beat as well.
Yeah. Well,
2A is
Clark
kind of
County's
tough.
yeah, Clark County, man. I don't know what's going on. They won the state title last year in 2A, and so now they're sitting over here. And Cottonwood, I'm going to tell you right now, Cottonwood is not. Cottonwood had several runs several years ago, but there's no reason that game should only been 27-7, unless it was 27-7 in the first quarter and they just held the ball the rest of the game. But I mean, with that being said, I watched Vincent Luverne, and Luverne was up on that game 14-0, and the difference was Luverne was more athletic, but Vincent, every time Luverne threw the ball or ran the ball, Vincent was like little hornets. There'd be like 10 or 11 of them on that ball carrier. And Luverne, they would let one guy make the play. And eventually that game wore on, and Vincent wore them out, ended up beating them by a point. And we talked about, and I talked about Luverne being good and Vincent probably not beating them, but I was wrong on that because Vincent's kids played a lot harder than Luverne did, especially in the second half. And Luverne was up 14-0, and it looked like they were about to absolutely murder Vincent. But I mean, hats off to them. Clark County's going to come in. They're going to run the wing tee, and they're going to be really physical. But it looked like Vincent was really well coached. They run by a couple formations on offense, but defensively, they have some kids who they just rallied to the football. Like, I don't think Clark County is going to bust a whole lot of long runs just because of the way they play defense. And so you're going to turn on the TV or whatever. You'll follow the scores, and it might be like a 14-7 game.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I don't think either one of them's going to score very many points.
You got had to zoom in. With another one we got, Reeltown, just like their neighbors over at Tallahassee, advancing to the second round. They got GW Long. What I did not see any of the Reeltown game Friday night. I didn't never even turn it on.
So Reeltown, they run offensively. They run the wishbone. I mean, they line up. They got three really good guys they hand the football to. And the years that those guys are better than everybody else, they win a lot of football games. The years those guys are not very good or they're average, they don't win a lot of football games. So it's kind of like, those coaches just trying to get the kids out there to the field. And if those kids are really good, then they're going, they have a chance to do it. But I mean, GW Long, they're going to be that coach over there. He's a good guy, and he's going to have them coached up. But I mean, when you run the wishbone and you're really physical and you got really good players, like you could take Reeltown's running backs and go put them on a 4 or 5A school, and they would still start at running back. The difference is they run an offense where college guys would come down and recruit them. Like you can look back in history, and Reeltown may have won several state championships, but they have very few kids who play in college because nobody knows about them because they run the wishbone, and nobody runs that anymore. So their knowledge of the game is limited. But I think they beat GW Long. But
just looking down the bracket, just finish up 2A. We got BB Comer, hosting Wicksburg, Reeltown hosting GW Long. I think of it reading that right.
Yep.
Then you got Arton and Highland Home, and then Vincent makes a travel up to Clark County. So those are your 2A games.
I'll tell you a kid to watch out for is that running back at BB Comer. Looks like a daggum. Looks like he should be playing middle linebacker for the Steelers, and he's freaking running the football. And poor old Lynette looks like they got a bunch of 9th and 10th graders out there. Their coach talked about how young their team was, but goodness gracious. I mean, this boy, man, he's got to weigh like 230 pounds.
Yeah.
And he's carrying his football, and he may be they may beat everybody else on this. I mean, I was suspect of BB Comer because of who they are, but when I watched them and I watched that kid right there carry the football and their quarterback, how fast he was, dude, I don't know. They may win the whole daggone thing, in my opinion. I don't know.
Well, we got 4 games in 1A. Anything? What stood out to you in 1A? I mean, you got Leroy with a big win over Georgiana. Maplesville 55-8 over RC Hatch. All these games just lopsided, except for Lochapoka and Keith. But I mean, Linden 54-8 over Autauguaville. Brantley 39-3 over Choctaw County. Elba 42-20 over Southern Choctaw. Sweetwater big win over Verbena 48-8, and Millry over Floral 55-7. I mean, all these first round games. I mean, there's just they're
we said last
surprise.
week that all the host teams are going to win. I mean, this is the most lopsided first round thing in the entire country, probably. Lochapoka game kind of stood out because Keith, naturally not a very good football school, and Lochapoka, I mean, I think they, in that region over there, they were second. They're 9-1 now. I mean, they were, 8-1 at the time, rolling to the playoffs behind Maplesville. But I mean, I expected that one to be just like the rest of them. But that's really, I think they're the odd man out in this second round. The rest of them, again, Maplesville, Leroy, Linden, Brantley, Elba, and Sweetwater. They've all won state championships or multiple state championships or been to multiple state championships in the last 10 years. Maplesville, they had a kid who was like the four-time, they won four in a row several years ago. Elba went to back-to-back state titles in like 08, 09. Sweetwater won it last year. Leroy, they win like 3 out of 4 in the late 2000s. I mean, Linden went to several. Brantley won it in like 08. They had an Auburn commit on that team. And so, I mean, I have no idea. Like, this would be the one that I honestly have no idea who's going to win out of them top 6 teams who would move forward. All three of those games would be unbelievable to be at. Because Leroy, Maplesville, Linden and Brantley, all those schools are super loaded with athletes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Them 6 schools, they may win two. They might could win 2 or 3A, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sweetwater,
Yes.
you take their kids out of the thing and if you put Demopolis jerseys on Sweetwater, you would think they're Demopolis kids because they're so big. So, who knows? But Elba's the same way. You could come over here and put Mobile Christian jerseys on Elba kids, and you would never think a second about it.
Yeah. Well, definitely. There's just so many. There's so many good games. It's going to be this weekend, and that Maplesville Leroy game sticking out a little bit. We've kind of talked earlier. I don't even know if we were even. I think it was when we were off camera talking about Millery and Lochapoka, how Millery should handle that one.
Mm-hmm.
I think kind of like Sweetwater, Linden and Brantley. I don't know. I think Linden might score too many points for him, but that Maplesville Leroy game, that might be the prime matchup here in 1A.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
right.
Well, give me one more thing you're looking for this weekend. Something just that we didn't talk about.
Well, let's see. One game to keep eyeballed on is maybe the 2A game, which is Highland Home and Ayrton. And, Ayrton beat them 33-34 earlier in the year. I think it was week 2. And so, again, Highland Home has a 5-star defensive end who also plays tight end for him, who's a SEC type of kid. Does he play like an SEC kid and take over a football game somewhere down the line, or does Ayrton win that thing? And again, that's all. Ayrton's up towards Troy, Highland Home's up towards Troy, and Ayrton's over in the Wiregrass. But that's anytime you have a 5-star kid on a 2A team, you would think he makes a difference. But we'll see.
All right. Well, I think I'm still just. I'm a homer, so I'm gonna come back to Gulf Shores. I really think, I'm looking forward to Gulf Shores going up there. Hope they can hang with them, and which they should be able to hang with them. I just hope ball bounces in their favor and they're able to dominate the way they have several times this year, and come home and host that semifinal. Or they get I guess they get the third round game, and then they'd still host the semifinal. So.
Oh yeah, they win this one. They got 2 back-to-back home playoff games.
Yep, the island's gonna be buzzing. So, well, awesome. Well, man, that's week 2. I guess we'll just keep this up, and it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. Make some comments. Tell us who you want us to talk about, or what information you want. We have access to stuff that maybe some of you guys don't, and so we can highlight anything that you want to highlight.
Yeah. So. Well, I can definitely tell by the way the first week's video went when we put it out. We did have a lot of watch. I got a bunch of comments just to my cell phone, just people just liking the video and stuff like that. So you'll be able to see it. You're probably watching it. If you're watching it right now, you're watching it on YouTube. and we'll post it on Facebook at some point. So, um, but yeah, I mean, YouTube's the way to go. Like it, subscribe, throw the thumbs up. We're gonna keep Unrivaled Preps going and hopefully growing. So, but yeah, man, appreciate you joining, and we will see you next week for week 3, and hopefully a Dolphins victory and just a whole bunch of other good football games.
Yeah, sounds
So,
good. I can't
all
wait.
right, all
Go
right,
Dolphins.
sounds good. Go Dolphins. We'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching.